Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vanderbyl. I'm with the flood team at Tricentis. And today I'm going to talk to you shortly about load testing in Tosca. You may have already heard that load testing is coming to Tosca. And we're really excited to announce the features that we're introducing and the different methods of load testing that we're building into Tosca, which is going to be available very shortly. So, firstly, I think the exciting part here is that we've built this from the ground up in such a way that all of your tests are reusable as load tests. So, for example, if you've got an API scan or an API test that you've done as a functional test, you can now convert that to a very high concurrency, high-performing load test, which will be powered by Apache JMeter underneath the hood. And we do all of the scaling for that automatically for you. But I know that a lot of people aren't doing API testing necessarily. So the big thing here that I think it kind of goes, it's hard to understate how big this is, but we now do UI load testing within Tosca. So your existing browser UI tests can now be turned into load tests. Using Flood's distributed grid infrastructure, we can then scale that out to literally thousands of instances running actual web browsers simulating real user behavior against your application and reporting those results back to Flood's real-time analytics dashboard. So unlike, I suppose, previous load testing tools in this space, where a traditional approach would be to, say, record the behavior on the network, which is happening as as your test is running, and then turning that into a load test using some sort of correlation engine. We're not doing anything like that, so it's not adding any extra maintenance overhead or anything like that. So the cool thing about this is it's powered by Google Chrome, so you've got access to the latest web technologies. It fully supports all Tosca browser customizations, so we can test things like SAP Fiori very easily. And using Flood's distributed grid infrastructure, we can scale this out to tens or thousands or hundreds of thousands of users, or in the case of API tests, tens of millions of users. So for argument's sake, why is there a difference between API and UI tests in this case? Or what we're going to call browser level and protocol level. And so, does anyone have a guess at, if you go to Amazon.com, how many requests this is going to make over the network? Can I raise their hands for 10 or 20? Bit puzzled? Okay. Well, you'd be really surprised because, I mean, most complicated applications these days, it's just mind-boggling how much stuff goes over the wire. So one visit to Amazon.com produces over 300 network requests. So that's equivalent of saying in your Tosca UI test, saying open URL, Amazon.com. That's one action that we have to take care of in our test. Whereas if we were testing this at the protocol level, we would be scripting 300 plus different interactions that are happening to multiple different endpoints. But all of this complexity is buried for us by Tosca. So if we were to break this down of kind of like how we like to think of this as, we've got kind of the UI component, which we call browser level users. And then we've got the protocol level users, which is basically what everything we call on the wire. So you're going to hear this term blues or browser level users thrown around a fair bit at Accelerate this year. And this is our approach to really redefining what the load testing means in 2018. So some actual practical use cases here. So with browser level users, testing really complicated applications that have a high degree of AJAX functionality or single page applications built in modern technologies like React or Ember or Angular, which traditionally you might only be testing the API layer. We can now test all the user interactions end to end and measure the performance of how, in a measurement of how many interactions our customers can actually complete against our application. And the interesting thing about doing this at the UI level is it makes simulating the user scenarios a lot more accurate than doing that at the protocol level, where you might, through to the design of the test, get massive performance on one endpoint and really poor performance on another endpoint. That said, there's still a huge use case for testing at the protocol level. Things like testing the high-performance APIs, which we need to know can handle tens or hundreds of millions of users, as we've got some customers doing already. So what does it look like? Well, this is the new stream configuration panel in Tosca Commander. So what we've got here is what we call a stream, which is kind of like a configuration of the test. So in Flood, we call our test floods, so a stream essentially becomes a flood. If you like water puns. So very easily, we can now just, as another line item within our execution list, we can configure the test, pick which region we're going in. We support over 50 regions across Amazon and Azure clouds. And we can very simply just press F6, and we'll see the results immediately appearing within Flood. And we can make changes as the test goes. For example, if we decide, okay, we're not getting enough load, we can pause the test, make some changes, start it again. Or if things aren't going to plan, things are going really, really bad, we can pause the test and tweak it again. Or if things are going really well, you might want to watch it, how it plays out. We can analyze the history of these tests over time. So that is a brief introduction to the load testing capability that we're adding to Tosca. And just to recap very quickly, we can very easily execute load tests of any size, literally from 1 user up to 5-10 million users. We can distribute this load across Azure and Amazon clouds in all available regions, and anytime a new region becomes available, as they're always adding new regions, we automatically have support for them. And you can view the results streaming in real time into the Flood dashboard. And like I said, we can reduce the feedback loop of making changes to our test configuration by easily being able to pause our load test and make changes without having to rebuild all of our infrastructure that is going to launch and scale up our load. And most importantly, we can reuse all of our existing browser and API test cases as load tests without any extra configuration, no duplicate maintenance, all within Tosca. So we're bringing functional to performance with Tosca Flood.